It was a rainy afternoon in the quiet town of Montclair, New Jersey, when the small community was shaken by the disappearance of 26-year-old Clara Whitman. Clara was known for her gentle nature and the way she lit up any room she entered. She worked as a librarian, and those who knew her described her as thoughtful, intelligent, and quietly determined. The town had always felt safe, a place where neighbors waved to one another and children played freely in parks, but Clara's sudden vanishing shattered that sense of security. Her family immediately reported her missing, and the local police launched an investigation that would stretch over years, leaving a trail of unanswered questions and heartbreak. The initial days after Clara disappeared were chaotic, filled with hope, confusion, and fear. Police scoured the streets, checked surveillance cameras, and interviewed friends, colleagues, and acquaintances. Each lead was meticulously followed, yet nothing concrete emerged. Clara's apartment showed no signs of forced entry, and her personal belongings remained undisturbed, except for her car keys and purse, which were missing. Detectives speculated about potential abductions or voluntary disappearance, but those theories clashed with the kind of person Clara was known to be. As the days turned into weeks and weeks into months, the trail grew cold. For Clara's parents, Margaret and Thomas Whitman, every passing day was agony, their lives suspended in uncertainty, wondering if they would ever see their daughter again. For years, the investigation languished, the case filed under cold in the police department. The small town whispered about theories, from someone Clara had met recently to a stranger passing through, but no evidence substantiated any of them. Her family clung to hope, refusing to let go of the idea that Clara might still be found alive. They printed flyers, participated in searches, and even appeared on local news, begging for anyone with information to come forward. Still, the case seemed like a puzzle missing its most crucial pieces, a mystery that mocked the town's sense of safety. In 2012, 8 years after Clara's disappearance, the Montclair Police Department decided to revisit the case, motivated by advances in forensic science and cold case methodologies. Detective Renee Vargas, known for her persistence and attention to detail, was assigned to lead the renewed investigation. She approached the case with fresh eyes, reviewing every file, every report, every interview transcript. It was during this meticulous review that she noticed something previously overlooked, a series of seemingly minor forensic details that, when viewed together, pointed toward a specific individual in Clara's circle. A neighbor's offhand comment about a suspicious visitor and subtle inconsistencies in witness statements began to form a clearer picture. Detective Vargas understood that solving this case would require patience, precision, and the application of the latest forensic technologies. One of the most critical breakthroughs came when the forensic team revisited old physical evidence collected from Clara's apartment and car. Though the items had not been fully tested with modern DNA analysis at the time of her disappearance, advancements in forensic techniques now allowed for the examination of trace evidence that had previously gone undetectable. Tiny fibers, partial fingerprints, and a small smear on a doorknob became central to the investigation. The forensic lab worked tirelessly, cross-referencing samples against national databases. Weeks turned into months as the technology unraveled what had long remained invisible, until one day, a result came back that shocked everyone involved. A DNA match from a previously unidentified cigarette butt found near Clara's apartment linked directly to a man with a criminal record. The man, whose name was Jonathan Keller, had lived in Montclair for several years and worked as a delivery driver. He had a history of minor offenses, but nothing that initially raised red flags for the original investigation. However, the DNA evidence was indisputable. Keller's genetic material matched the evidence retrieved from Clara's apartment, placing him at the scene around the time of her disappearance. Detective Vargas knew that this was the break they had been waiting for, but she also understood the importance of building a complete case. DNA alone, while compelling, was only part of the story. The team needed corroborating evidence, witnesses, and context to ensure that justice would be upheld in court. As investigators delved into Keller's background, a more unsettling picture emerged. Neighbors recounted unusual behaviors, including instances of him loitering near Clara's workplace and following her in public. Financial records revealed minor inconsistencies and unexplained expenditures around the time of Clara's disappearance. Investigators also discovered that Keller had a pattern of manipulating those around him, creating a facade of normalcy while concealing darker impulses. Each discovery deepened the narrative, linking him more concretely to the night Clara vanished. The town, which had long whispered theories, now faced the grim reality that someone they had passed on the street could have been responsible for such a heinous act. Clara's family was cautiously optimistic as they were updated on the investigation's progress. Margaret Whitman recalled the moment Detective Vargas shared the news of the DNA match. She remembered her hands shaking, a mix of fear and hope gripping her chest. The possibility of finally knowing the truth about what had happened to her daughter was overwhelming. For years, the unknown had been a heavy weight, shaping every thought, every decision, every interaction. Now, after nearly a decade, there was a glimmer of clarity, a chance for closure, and the possibility of justice finally being served. As preparations for Keller's arrest moved forward, the investigation team worked meticulously to ensure that every detail was accounted for. Surveillance, background checks, and strategic planning were employed to prevent any chance of flight or destruction of evidence. The arrest, when it came, was executed in the early hours of a cold winter morning. Keller was taken into custody without incident, but the emotional weight of the arrest reverberated through the community. People who had lived under the shadow of Clara's disappearance for years felt a mixture of relief, anger, and sorrow. The reality of what had been uncovered, the fact that the person responsible had lived among them, undetected, was both shocking and chilling. Once in custody, Keller initially denied any involvement. He presented himself as cooperative yet noncommittal, a man who seemed to understand the gravity of the situation without fully admitting guilt. Detectives knew that securing a confession would be challenging, but they were confident that the combination of DNA evidence, witness statements, and forensic corroboration created an undeniable case. The interviews were long, intense, and psychologically taxing, with investigators carefully balancing pressure and patience to elicit truthful responses without compromising legal integrity. The first signs of cracking came when Keller's alibi began to unravel. Inconsistencies in his story, small details that didn't align with surveillance footage and delivery logs, started to erode his credibility. Confronted with the evidence, Keller's composure began to slip. He would pause, hesitate, and occasionally contradict himself, small cracks that investigators knew would widen under sustained scrutiny. The tension was palpable. Each session in the interrogation room felt like a battle of wills, with the truth inching closer, threatening to break through the carefully constructed facade Keller had maintained for years. It was during a late-night interview that the breakthrough finally occurred. Exhausted and confronted with irrefutable evidence, Keller confessed to his role in Clara's disappearance. He described the sequence of events with a chilling detachment, yet with enough detail to align precisely with the evidence collected over the years. Investigators were meticulous in documenting every statement, every pause, every nuance. The confession was comprehensive, providing clarity on motives, methods, and the timeline of that night in 2004. It was a devastating revelation, yet for Clara's family, it was also a confirmation of the truth they had long sought. The confession sent shockwaves through Montclair. People struggled to reconcile the image of Keller they had known casually with the man revealed through investigation. Conversations that had once centered on fear and speculation shifted to processing the gravity of the crime and the closure that had finally been achieved. The community, once silent and cautious, began to rally around Clara's family, offering support and solidarity in ways that spoke to their shared grief and resilience. As the legal process moved forward, prosecutors built their case on the foundation of DNA evidence, forensic analysis, and Keller's confession. Each piece of information, carefully cross-referenced and verified, painted a complete picture of the crime. Defense attempts to challenge the DNA analysis were countered with the expertise of forensic specialists who meticulously explained the methods, controls, and certainty of the results. Witness testimony corroborated Keller's presence and actions, leaving little room for doubt. The courtroom drama, though technical in its presentation, carried a deeply human resonance, reflecting the years of loss, perseverance, and relentless pursuit of justice that had characterized the investigation. For Clara's parents, the months that followed were both emotionally exhausting and profoundly cathartic. They navigated a whirlwind of legal proceedings, media attention, and community support. Yet through it all, they remained steadfast in their commitment to honor Clara's memory, to see justice served, and to ensure that her story would have a lasting impact. They spoke openly about the pain of uncertainty, the hope that sustained them through years of waiting, and the sense of closure that came with the resolution of the case. Detective Vargas reflected on the entire journey, from the initial disappearance to the breakthrough arrest. She understood that cases like Clara's were not just about solving a crime, but about restoring faith in a community, validating the experiences of victims and their families, and demonstrating the enduring power of careful, persistent investigation. The tools of modern forensics, combined with unwavering dedication, had illuminated the truth that had once seemed impossible to reach. The case, once cold, now stood as a testament to the value of perseverance, innovation, and the relentless pursuit of justice. The weeks following Jonathan Keller's arrest were intense, filled with a mixture of relief and raw emotion. Clara Whitman's parents tried to navigate life with the constant presence of memories that refused to fade. Margaret Whitman would often sit in her daughter's old bedroom, touching the belongings left behind, haunted by the echo of Clara's laughter. Thomas Whitman wandered the quiet streets she once walked, hopping to make sense of how someone could hide such cruelty in plain sight. Every day brought reminders of the years lost, the uncertainty endured, and the fear that had gripped their family for so long. Yet beneath the grief, a fragile thread of hope persisted, strengthened by the knowledge that the man responsible had finally been caught. Detective Renee Vargas felt a renewed sense of purpose as she delved deeper into the investigation. With Keller in custody, the focus shifted to piecing together the exact timeline of that fateful night, understanding his motives, and uncovering the full extent of his deception. She spent hours interviewing neighbors, coworkers, and anyone who might recall subtle interactions with Clara in the months leading to her disappearance. Each conversation revealed details that had once seemed insignificant: an overheard remark, a fleeting glance, or a casual encounter that now carried weight. It became clear that Keller had carefully constructed his life around the illusion of normalcy while orchestrating an unseen terror. During the investigation, a former coworker recalled that Clara had received several anonymous notes in the weeks before she vanished. Though she had dismissed them at the time, these messages had left her uneasy, hinting that someone was watching her every move. When investigators cross-referenced Keller's known whereabouts with the timing of the notes, a chilling pattern emerged. The realization that he had been stalking Clara, silently observing her daily routines, left the community shaken. A man who seemed ordinary, even trustworthy, had been hiding a sinister obsession for months, possibly years, without arousing suspicion. Forensic experts provided pivotal breakthroughs, analyzing items in Clara's apartment with new DNA technology. Tiny traces on a coffee mug, fingerprints on the doorknob, and even minute skin cells collected from various surfaces pointed directly to Keller. Each discovery carried a heavy emotional weight. These were not just scientific facts, they were pieces of a puzzle that had haunted Clara's family for over a decade. The evidence confirmed the terrifying reality. Keller had been in her apartment, close enough to leave traces of his presence, yet clever enough to avoid detection for years. Every piece brought clarity, but also intensified the grief of knowing what Clara had endured in her final moments. The deeper Detective Vargas investigated, the more unsettling Keller's behavior became. Friends and acquaintances described him as polite, even charming, a man who could blend into any social setting. Yet beneath that exterior, he had been manipulative, controlling, and methodical, orchestrating his actions to avoid scrutiny. Inconsistencies in his statements revealed the careful planning that had allowed him to conceal his crime for so long. It was as if he had lived a double life, the ordinary mask hiding something profoundly disturbing. For Clara's parents, the revelation was both horrifying and validating, proving that their daughter's fear had been real, perceptive, and tragically accurate. The community reacted to the arrest with a mixture of shock and relief. Media coverage brought national attention, detailing Keller's confession, the forensic breakthroughs, and the painstaking work of the investigative team. The story resonated deeply, not just in Montclair but across the country, as families of missing persons recognized echoes of their own pain. Support groups and advocacy organizations seized the moment to highlight the importance of persistence, the power of modern forensic science, and the courage required to never give up hope. Clara's family, though still grieving, found a sense of purpose in sharing their story, using their experience to educate, warn, and inspire others. As the court proceedings unfolded, the tension in the courtroom was palpable. Prosecutors presented DNA evidence, witness testimonies, and Keller's own admissions, meticulously reconstructing the events leading to Clara's disappearance. Defense attorneys attempted to discredit the evidence, questioning DNA analysis and witness reliability, but the overwhelming consistency of the case left little room for doubt. Each revelation brought tears, anger, and sometimes relief, as the truth that had eluded them for years was finally laid bare. For the Whitmans, hearing the details in court was excruciating, yet it affirmed that the painstaking years of waiting and questioning had not been in vain. Further testimony painted a vivid picture of Clara's final days, revealing moments of fear, hesitation, and attempts to seek help. Evidence showed how Keller had subtly controlled her environment, monitoring her movements and exerting psychological pressure. Each detail highlighted the extent of the terror Clara endured, often alone, and emphasized the magnitude of the crime. The case was no longer abstract. It was profoundly human, a story of manipulation, courage, and ultimately, justice delayed but not denied. The community, once shocked and fearful, now grappled with the realization that evil can wear the mask of normalcy, and that vigilance and compassion are crucial in protecting those who may be vulnerable. Even as the trial progressed, Detective Vargas and her team remained vigilant, conducting follow-up investigations and validating every piece of evidence. Their work reflected the years of lessons learned, meticulous attention to detail, patient perseverance, and unwavering commitment to the truth. Each witness re-interviewed, each trace of evidence reanalyzed, and every lead checked was a testament to the dedication that had finally unraveled the decades-long mystery. The case had become more than just a crime to solve. It was a narrative of human resilience, of the relentless pursuit of justice, and the profound impact of uncovering the truth no matter how much time had passed. Throughout these months, the Whitman family struggled with a whirlwind of emotions. Relief at Keller's arrest mingled with grief over years lost, moments stolen, and the haunting question of what might have been. Margaret Whitman often whispered to her daughter's photograph, recounting memories and moments they would never share again, while Thomas Whitman remained stoic, a pillar of quiet strength. The emotional journey was far from over, but with every courtroom revelation, with every forensic breakthrough, the family felt a step closer to healing. Clara's story, once silenced, was finally being told in full, bringing light to the darkest corners of their lives and the small town that had once been gripped by fear. The day of the sentencing was thick with tension, an almost tangible weight that pressed on everyone in the courtroom. Clara Whitman's parents sat together, holding hands, hearts heavy with grief, but strengthened by the knowledge that justice was finally within reach. Prosecutors recounted the meticulous forensic work, the DNA evidence that had ultimately exposed Keller's long-hidden deception, and the chilling details of his manipulation and surveillance of Clara in the months leading up to her disappearance. Each revelation left the courtroom silent, the gravity of the crime settling like a shadow over every person present. For Margaret and Thomas Whitman, every word reaffirmed the years of fear, uncertainty, and hope that had defined their lives since that tragic day. Yet it also confirmed the courage of their daughter's memory, finally honored with truth. Outside the courtroom, the small town of Montclair buzzed with mixed emotions. Neighbors and local residents had followed the case for years, speculating, worrying, and sometimes losing faith that answers would ever come. Now, the arrest, confession, and sentencing provided a collective release, a long-awaited catharsis. Many spoke openly about how the case had changed their perceptions of safety and trust, reminding everyone that appearances can be deceiving, that evil often hides in plain sight. Clara's story became a powerful example of the perseverance required in seeking justice, illustrating that even the darkest secrets cannot remain buried forever. As journalists captured every detail for the evening news, it was clear that this case resonated far beyond Montclair, touching communities nationwide who understood the struggle of waiting for closure. Inside the Whitman home, emotions ran raw and deep. Margaret wandered through the rooms, touching Clara's old journals and photographs, holding on to the fragments of a life that had been stolen too soon. Every detail brought memories flooding back, the laughter, the dreams, the quiet moments shared over family dinners. For Thomas, driving past the park where Clara used to meet friends, every swing set and pathway was a reminder of the daughter he had lost but whose story was now being vindicated. The family leaned on one another, their grief tempered by a sense of accomplishment, knowing that their daughter's life and voice mattered, that her memory had compelled the unraveling of years-long deception. The emotional weight of these months, combined with the public acknowledgement of their struggle, began to soften the sharp edges of their pain. Detective Renee Vargas continued to follow up on every lead, ensuring that no detail was overlooked, no stone left unturned. Keller's cooperation had revealed aspects of his past that shocked even seasoned investigators, hidden obsessions, carefully constructed lies, and moments where the line between normalcy and manipulation blurred. Each revelation brought with it a new layer of understanding of how Clara had been ensnared, and how Keller had maintained a facade of respectability to everyone around him. The detectives' team, having spent countless hours analyzing evidence, reconciling witness accounts, and validating forensic results, felt a mixture of relief and awe at how persistence, modern technology, and intuition had finally converged to reveal the truth. It was a hard-fought victory that reaffirmed their commitment to every unsolved case still waiting in shadows. The trial revealed more than just the facts of the crime. It exposed the psychological complexity of both victim and perpetrator. Witnesses described Clara's courage in the days leading up to her disappearance, the subtle ways she tried to protect herself, and her instincts that something was terribly wrong. Each testimony highlighted her intelligence, compassion, and bravery, painting a portrait of a young woman whose life had been violently interrupted, yet whose spirit refused to be silenced. The court heard Keller's own words, revealing the methodical cruelty he had wielded, but also moments of panic and miscalculation that ultimately led to his downfall. The stark contrast between Clara's humanity and Keller's manipulation deepened the emotional resonance of the case, leaving no doubt in the minds of those who followed the trial that justice was being served. As the sentencing concluded, Keller was taken away, his fate sealed by evidence that could not be contested. Outside the courthouse, reporters captured the faces of Clara's family, reflecting relief, sorrow, and an unshakable dignity. Margaret and Thomas Whitman shared a quiet moment, acknowledging both the enormity of the loss and the satisfaction of finally witnessing accountability. The town collectively exhaled, recognizing that a chapter of fear and speculation had ended. Support groups reached out, offering guidance and solidarity, and Clara's story became a reference point for discussions about the importance of forensic science, vigilance, and advocacy for missing persons. Her legacy, once clouded by uncertainty, now stood as a beacon of hope for families enduring similar struggles. Months later, the Whitmans began to heal in ways they had thought impossible. They renovated Clara's room into a memorial space, filled with her artwork, journals, and photographs, preserving her memory in a tangible form. They participated in community events to raise awareness about safety and the role of modern forensic technology in solving crimes. The town, once haunted by unanswered questions, now had a renewed sense of security and faith in the justice system. Detective Vargas reflected on the case as a testament to determination and the power of perseverance. The arrest had not only brought closure to a family, but had also strengthened the bonds of the community. Clara Whitman's story, marked by tragedy, courage, and resolution, had finally found its voice, resonating far beyond Montclair and reminding everyone that truth, no matter how long delayed, will ultimately prevail. The final impact of the case rippled quietly but powerfully. Families of other missing persons drew inspiration from the Whitmans, steadfastness, and the investigative breakthroughs that had solved the mystery. Discussions about forensic genealogy, DNA testing, and cold case review became more prominent in local law enforcement training programs, driven by the knowledge that even the most challenging cases could be unraveled with patience, technology, and human determination. The Whitmans, while still carrying the ache of loss, found solace in knowing that Clara's memory had led to tangible change, that her life, though tragically shortened, had catalyzed justice, education, and awareness. In the end, what had begun as a nightmare spanning years transformed into a story of resilience, justice, and the enduring power of truth.